When we think of the evolution timescale, we may think in terms of millions of years. However, doctors and scientists are saying that we are witnessing evolution right before our eyes. In fact, babies born within the last few years are already demonstrating certain traits that are vastly different from their parents. Scientists is calling this phenomenon microevolution, but I can assure you there's nothing small about these discoveries. Welcome to Blueprints Unsealed. Before we begin, please support the channel by subscribing and hitting the like button. Microevolution, also known as anatomical variations, can be determined by using a set of 5 criteria, which includes a small sample size, non-random mating, mutations, gene flow, and natural selection. In short, scientists believe that microevolution would need to take place in a small group before we can trace massive changes in the ecosystem. For example, French zoologist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck once suggested that the evolution of a giraffe's neck can be attributed to the scarcity of food. By having a long neck, it gave the giraffe a competitive advantage of reaching food at higher altitudes, not normally accessible by shorter animals. It's also been theorized that giraffes did not always have long necks, and that through a genetic mutation, a small group of baby giraffes were born with longer necks. So when the food supply became scarce, the long-necked giraffes survived, while the giraffes with the shorter necks perished. We call this phenomenon survival of the fittest. Before we continue, just want to point out a concept that a lot of people may get confused. When we consider evolution, think in terms of randomness. For example, when the majority of the giraffe population had short necks, the babies that were born with longer necks was totally random. However, through this random gene mutation, the giraffes that was able to eat simply passed on their genes, while the ones that starved simply went extinct.
An ABC News investigation, a hidden danger in the dentist office. We have learned about children, some of them as young as 18 months old, given dangerous doses of anesthesia, sedatives for routine procedures. This story, by the way, came from one of you, a grandmother who wrote ABC's chief investigative correspondent Brian Ross, and he decided to investigate.
For 8-year-old Raven Blanco, it was a routine trip to the dentist for a cavity and a cleaning.
She wanted to have pretty teeth.
5-year-old Diamond Brownridge needed some cavities filled and teeth capped.
Later that day, she was going to attend a princess party.
But like more than a dozen other children across the country, the trip to the dentist would lead to death.
Who thinks that they're going to take their daughter to the dentist and never bring her home?
Wisdom teeth, an evolutionary leftover. According to scientists, the need for a big, powerful jawbone was a necessity and vital for our ancestors to consume raw meat, nuts, roots, berries, and leaves. However, today less than 2% of adults aged 65 years or older maintain the teeth without cavities or periodontal disease. In fact, it is said that nearly 85% of Americans get their wisdom teeth removed at some point in their lives. According to a 2020 Australian study, it found that humans are increasingly being born without wisdom teeth. Obviously, this is a good thing, and quite frankly, according to a scientist, a change that is well overdue, especially since the human mouth has already evolved to become smaller. Since the 18th century, scientists have been studying a type of artery found in the forearm. They call it the median artery. The function of this artery is to supply blood to the forearm and hand. What scientists found interesting about this artery is that when they examined records of humans from just a few decades earlier, they noticed that this particular artery was not present, or at best rarely observed. Jump forward to the 19th century, and scientists noted a significant increase in the prevalence of the median artery in humans. In fact, they noticed that in the 18th century, they discovered that at least 10% of people had the median artery, and by the 20th century, they found that 30% of the population had this artery. If this trend continues, experts predict that a majority of the human population will evolve to have this artery. The American Heritage Dictionary defines a disease as a condition of an organism that impairs physiological functioning resulting from causes such as infection, genetic defect, or environmental stress. Therefore, it may come as no surprise that some scientists actually considers the process of aging as a disease. In fact, if you take away the process of aging, then one may be considered immortal, although one may still be subjected to death by injury. Nonetheless, aging is the single most powerful factor in the diseases that are most likely to cut our lives short. The good news is that life expectancy has significantly improved throughout the 19th and 20th century. For instance, in 1925, the life expectancy was 59 years old, while in 1985, that age increased to 75 years. Sadly, in year 2021, life expectancy dropped down to 78.99 years. However, with heavy research dedicated in the fields of increasing the limits of longevity, experts claim that babies born within the last decade have a real chance of reaching the age of 142 years old. Researchers are considering a host of opportunities, from regenerative medicine that can interrupt aging to biohacking and manipulating our genes for a longer lifespan. According to an article written in Time magazine, a new antibiotic by the name rapamycin showed great promise for increasing the lifespan of many different species, such as yeast, worms, flies, and mice. If all goes well, this may also increase the life of humans. The most intriguing aspect of life is probably the realization that we don't know where we came from, followed by what happens after we die. However, although death is inevitable, that has never stopped us from looking for ways to prolong life. In fact, recent scientific findings indicate that the human race may be evolving faster than it has at any point in the last 250 years. With all these micro changes, it may just be a matter of time before we witness the birth of a baby that looks nothing like us. Thanks for watching. Please consider supporting the channel by hitting the like button and subscribing.